This is going to be a hopefully pretty quick video on Dermestid beetle care, or how I do it anyway. First thing you will notice is that they're indoors. This is just because despite the glaring sunshine outside, it's actually winter still, and well, fall by now, but it gets below freezing. And that's no good for these guys. So I just keep them inside for the colder months. You might have a better setup. I find that this works for me because I've got a spare room that I can keep warm and dark just by closing all that up, all those curtains. And that's how they like to be kept. They don't have an odor, and I enjoy watching them work, so I really don't mind them in here at all. About a month from now, it'll be warm enough to keep them back out where I usually do, which is in the garage. But until then, I keep them in here and monitor the temperature, which I will get to first. This is an Exoterra temperature probe meant for reptiles. I find that it works really well for beetles because, there we go, finally in focus. Yeah, it looks like it's at about 70 degrees right now. That's a really good moderate temperature for them. At that temperature, they'll be running around, pretty active, willing to eat whatever it is you have for them to clean. Anything in that orange and red range is going to be really good for them. At about, it's like 95 and up, they actually gain the ability to fly. That's the only time you will have any difficulty containing them from my experience, but even so, they don't really, actively buzz around the way that flies do, like, at the lid or anything, just ready to escape. They typically use their wings to get from point A to point B, and, they'll just do really short little stints of flight to get, like, from up here to down there, or to get to water or food sources. So, last summer, when there were plenty flying around in the tank, opening and closing this all the time to give them food and water, I lost a total of 2. Not really a big deal, because there's probably like 3,000 in there. Not something you have to worry too much about. The green there is just everything above freezing, which they'll do fine, but the colder they get, the less they'll want to move around and eat. And then the blue, that's everything below freezing. That's when they go really slow, kind of dormant, and do run the risk of dying, because apart from just kind of hibernating, they do actually die at that point, so not great. It's good to have at least one temperature probe. This is a massive tank with a hot side over here. They could probably use at least 2, so I'll probably be getting another one. But apart from that, a couple things that you'll want to pay attention to other than temperature is water and food. For water, this is my second time taking this video, so most of them have already left, but there were a whole lot getting down on some water there. That's just a kitchen sponge. I find sponges are the best for retaining water without running the risk of molding everything around them too bad. I just spritz the top of it. I don't soak the whole thing. And yeah, they respond really well to it. They can take really nice long drinks. I'll actually give them a little bit more. They're not going to like it when I spray their heads, but it usually does summon up a lot more beetles. I don't know if it's that they can detect the water, or they hear the sound, or what, but hopefully that'll get them a little more active for the video. So that's how I do it. If you use sponges too, which is what I'd recommend, then just be sure that when you buy them, they're not infused with any soap or other chemical meant for cleaning. Just get straight up sponges, because I imagine soap and whatnot would kill them pretty fast. For a staple diet, when you're not having them clean anything, I use just dog and cat food, because that's what I have around, having a dog and a cat. If you don't have pet food handy, the cheapest cat kibble will probably do you just fine, or you can give them, just about anything. They love jerky. You can see some, like, the white little shavings there from sheep's ears and pig's ears that you can buy at Petco. Yeah, I give them table scraps pretty often. If I'm cooking meat or whatever, they'll have some. They're really not too picky and pretty easy to feed, so that's not a huge concern. Just a few chunks of kibble will last these guys quite a while. They don't eat too much. Basically just eat what they need to of something like that. And if you give them a fresh carcass, that's when they actually go crazy and just eat tons. For bedding, I use shredded paper. This is what I think is best for my personal use because it's cheap, easy to find. You can make it yourself if you need to. You don't have to use so much bedding, or maybe any bedding at all, but I find that it's best because it gives the frass some place to go. The frass being everything from the dead to the shed to fur and feathers and all kinds of waste products. It'll give it all a chance to kind of sink to the bottom and keep your cage fresher. Plus they like to burrow to get away from the light or to get warmer or whatever they need to do. So I find that that's my personal favorite, is just shredded paper. I've seen all kinds of things used. The only thing that I worry about is shredded wood, some wood being a natural insecticide, so you want to watch out for that. A couple other things you may see in here that are a little odd. I've got this cardboard platform. This is just for when I want them to clean a small animal, and I'll get to that in a second. These tubes serve absolutely no purpose whatsoever, except for me just being a nerd and thinking that it might be some kind of enrichment or something. They do like to hang out in there, so I just leave them, and it's totally unnecessary. You might as well ignore it. But over here we have the pupating house. This is just a huge piece of styrofoam that looks like a castle and is kind of cool. It's filled on the inside with just more styrofoam, just chunks shredded, packing peanuts and things. Now, it looks filthy. That's usually just dog food dust is the majority of that, because I'll put dog food here and then there, so that recently emerged beetles, freshly pupated, have something to eat right off the bat. So you've got this kind of like nasty brown tint to it from the food, and it's just a really old piece of styrofoam. So I'll be switching it out for corrugated cardboard, actually, because I heard that that's better. Mostly just because if larvae are burrowing... Oh hey, you got a lot of guys over there. Look at that. Cool. When larvae burrow, they can sometimes actually ingest the styrofoam, and it can lead to blockage and kill them, and with corrugated cardboard you don't have that happening. Even though the amount of deaths from the styrofoam would be really negligible, I figure might as well, since I have to change out the styrofoam anyway, just replace it with cardboard. But right now it serves its purpose really well. They obviously like it. As you can see, just thousands and thousands of holes from so much pupating. I have that second sponge there because that's where most of the beetles actually hang out. There's a heat pad here. I don't know if I mentioned it, but there is a heat pad on this side. So most of them will just kind of lay right there, soaking it all in and waiting for water. Yep, that's about all there is to this tank. Got the towel on it to protect it from the sun rays that always seem to find it when it's in the garage. Inside, it doesn't really matter that there's a towel, but I leave it on anyway. Also helps to keep the heat in a little bit better. This is a heat lamp. It's purely there by coincidence. I don't use it for beetles because it produces heat, but it also produces light, and you don't want that. Hi. Just tired of me making the same video over and over again. Alright, so this is my smaller tank. And as you might notice, this is where the heat pad is for the large tank. And if I just press these two up together, it serves to heat them both pretty well. So that's pretty neat. Right now I have a vole in one of its last stages. You can see there is what is like 90% skeleton, and there's still some organs, some dried organs in the body cavity, and a skull with still some brain matter in there, so I'm letting them finish it off. What I do with a small animal, instead of just throwing it in there like I would with like a whole giant leg or a head or something, I worry about little bones getting scattered and lost forever in all of this substrate. So what I do is I take the small animal, I freeze it overnight to make sure that there's no maggots and nastiness that might be lingering once it's collected. I freeze it, I put it on this platform here, the cardboard, with maybe a couple layers of paper towel so that any moisture from thawing and, you know, just the nastiness of decay, none of that's going to touch the paper directly to help keep it a little cleaner in there. And I put that animal in there and wait for enough beetles to find it and latch on for a meal. And then I'll just transfer all of that with the beetles intact into here. And in here I use paper towels as substrate because it's just a temporary holding place for the beetles. They don't need to burrow. I don't have to worry about frass or whatever. I just clean it every time they're done. So without having to worry about the shredded paper, you know, you don't have to try and keep track of all the bones. They're going to be really easy to find. So I always have a water sponge in here. I'll give them a little bit of fresh water too. Oops, I spilled. That's fine. Poured it right on that beetle's head. Yeah, so I'll have a water sponge in here. I'll have some pieces of styrofoam sometimes, just in case they need to pupate. And I'll have the animal with all the beetles attached and put usually like a little cardboard box over it to make a little house, and they just go crazy. And then in a couple days you'll get what you see here, which is mostly skeleton. And then you can reduce the amount of beetles. I just take everything in here, set the bones aside, dump it into my big tank. That's what all that fur is from, and that's where most of the beetles will go. And then you can just work on a smaller army cleaning the last remaining guts. And the reason why you wouldn't just want, you know, tons of beetles all the time is because if you don't catch them in that sweet spot between cleaning like everything and taking it apart, then, you know, they're just going to dismantle it. So this way I can keep a closer eye. It's going to take them slightly longer. I can tell exactly when they're ready to go back and when the skeleton's ready to clean. I don't want them taking apart the natural cartilage that keeps all these bones together, because you can't really articulate something so small. So if they take that apart, I'll never get it back together. If they dismantle all those little vertebrae in that tiny little tail, you know, I'm kind of screwed if I want that intact. So I just drastically reduce the amount and let them do the final details. And then if I do see something that they've taken off, or something that's just, you know, the skull almost always falls off, and usually the bottom and top jaw will come apart as well. So when I see something like that that's actually totally clean, I move it into this bin over here. Here we have, let's see if it's going to actually focus or not. Whoa, let's not drop it either. Hello. We have got the lower jaw. Right there. There's also a little hand. Right, it's the arm and the hand and some claws, and it won't focus, but kind of cute, right? So that'll probably go in there by tonight once they finish cleaning out inside the skull. Maybe another day for that, and it'll be ready to be cleaned and sanitized and whitened in some peroxide, and then whatever I have planned for it can be done, crafting jewelry, you know, whatever. And then they'll just all go back in the big tank again. This will be cleaned if it needs to be cleaned, and kept for the next time that I have a small animal. So that's all there is to it, really. It's not super hard to keep these guys, and I would say that when you think about like time and smell and difficulty, this is way a better bet than something like maceration or burial or any of the other methods that I've seen used. So it really beats me why more people don't use them. I would definitely recommend it over just about everything else. Okay, one last thing, because I definitely forgot to mention. Tank size. This is 40 gallons. I got it because it was super cheap on Craigslist for the size that it was. I think I paid like $20 or something like that. You definitely don't need something so large. Even if you wanted to put something like an entire moose in here, they can only clean so much at once before you just have like a massive mess, because yeah, you're going to want to give them it in segments, right? So you would do like a skull and a leg or whatever at a time, and keep the rest in a chest freezer, which is something I definitely need to acquire. So with that being the case, you could probably get away with something even like this big. The beetles don't really need to spread out so far. They can live really condensed and be quite happy. So you definitely don't need to go and splurge on something quite this big. I just did because it was nice and affordable. I find that secondhand tanks are, easily the most readily available for a good price, but you could also use things like plastic tubs, like bins, storage tote type things, or an enclosure that you might want to build yourself out of like plexiglass or whatever. You're just going to want to make sure that they can't climb out of whatever it is that you buy for them or make for them. So you'd want to do a test run. Maybe put something desirable out of reach and see whether or not they can, get to it in desperation. I was told, or I'd heard from a lot of people on forums and whatnot, that they can climb just about anything, but from my own findings, they're pretty terrible at it. So I was told, for instance, they could climb the glue caulking that keeps aquariums together on the inside there. And because I was told that, I went ahead and taped up the sides of this big one. That's why it looks so shoddy. But as it turns out, they don't. They can't climb that at all. They can't get footing. And they can't get footing on the tape either, but definitely wasn't necessary to put it there. They can't climb the glass. They can't climb that plastic cottage cheese tub in there. The only thing in this tank they can really climb is the styrofoam. Yeah, so definitely, you've got a lot of options regarding size and material, and you don't have to do it exactly how I did. But, yep, thought that was worth a mention. Now, I think that should be everything by now, but there's a good chance that I left something else out again, so if you have any questions, post them in the comments, and I will be happy to try my best and answer them for you.